What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now let's get cozy and start today's episode. What if you took the pressure off yourself to find a big idea and started looking for a small idea? If you're looking to share your message through big stages like a TEDx talk and writing your book to make a positive impact in more people's lives, including your own, then episode 145 of the Lead with Love podcast is for you. Because in today's conversation, I get cozy with my friend and my personal book coach, Azul Terronez, host of the Born to Write podcast. Azul helps authors and entrepreneurs write and publish books so that they can reach more people, grow their brand, and share their message in an authentic way. And Azul really walks this talk. He's very clear on the type of authors that he serves and who he says yes to and no to. And I know there are many opportunities to write a book. And if you're looking for the process to be more soulful, where you're in a discovery and inquiry and excavating the truth, then Azul is your guy. If you're wanting something quick and just for marketing, there's many other tools and people that could support you. And his team can definitely do that. But Azul has a way of connecting to you and the soul of your book, which is so powerful. And I've already had a couple of sessions with him. So I just really had to share that because I'm so excited. Because as I've been sharing with you, writing my next book is my number one priority this year. It is my heart project. It's not a cash project. And sometimes heart projects get put on the back burner because we always feel like we have to be making money. But if we want to make peace with our soul, we have to get our work out in the world and do those heart projects. So I've created and designed my business this year to support that creativity and space. And I'm just so excited. Now, some things that we talk about are how to cultivate an authentic relationship with people, influencers, and even, mentors that you want in your business and life that will really open up doors to new possibilities. We also talk about Azul's counterintuitive process to growing his TEDx talk to over 1 million views. That's just crazy. And the talk is called What Makes a Good Teacher Great. He also shares some simple tips, habits, and strategies that I'm personally going to implement to actually write your book, not just talk about writing a book, because I can raise my hand 1,000,000 times to that, and how he was able to write a book in less than 30 days. And he also supported one of our previous Lead with Love podcast guest, Pat Flynn, who is the founder of Smart Passive Income. He's also my business coach right now. And Azul was his book coach for his Wall Street Journal bestselling book, Will It Fly? And if you're on the fence with an idea and needing to implement it, you definitely want to check that out. And something that's really cool about Azul is he's originally from California like me, but he is a gypsy at heart like me, and he just loves to travel and really creating a location independent lifestyle with his husband. He's been to so many cool countries, and we also talk about that of kind of what's fun and challenging about having a business while moving around all the time and living that nomadic life, which is really, really cool. Now, if you want to find full show notes from this episode, head over to jadaselner.com/145. And since I feel like I'm in the podcast rhythm now, I have to invite you over to Instagram. I have been very MIA on Instagram, but I'm making a consistent effort to actually show up there more often and really share my ideas and my message and my beliefs and what I stand for, and just really using that platform to be a creative expression for myself. So head over to @JadaSellner, and I respond to every comment over there because, I believe in no comment left behind. So definitely head over to @JadaSellner. I'll be sharing some IG stories for behind the scenes, and also we can have comments and conversations about these conversations here. I really want to know your biggest takeaways and insights and all that goodness. So definitely follow me over there. And now let's get cozy with my friend Azul. So I'm excited to connect with you today, Azul. I feel like we always have really warm, cozy conversations no matter what, but I actually am sipping on some hot tea right now, and I'm going to share the tea inspired message of the day. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Give happiness and you will end up happy.
Beautiful. I love that.
Sipping on my lemon ginger tea with some happiness inspiration. So, Azul, I'm so excited for us to have this recorded conversation because we have so many unrecorded. And I remember when we first met, which was actually in the Philippines,
right,
in Cebu. And I feel like I just see you in different places around the world, but we had an opportunity. I was speaking at Chris Ducker's Tropical Think Tank, and I feel like we connected towards the end of the event. I was on the boat, right? Like the yacht.
Right. It was like the last day.
Yeah. And I'm just like, as soon as we connected, conversated, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's my BFF forever. Like we just had so many things. Like we shared so many different lifetimes of ours and different career paths, which I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you because you are multifaceted, multi-passionate. You have just a rich story and life, and I'm just honored to be able to dig into this with you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I feel really comfortable every time I talk to you. So this is just going to be for everyone else to kind of listen in.
Yeah. And, something that is fascinating about you is like you've chosen to live a nomadic lifestyle right now, but I think you're starting to pivot that a little bit. So could you tell me where you are in this very moment?
Yeah, right in this very moment. I'm in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And I realized today, Steve mentioned this, that this is the longest we've been somewhere in a while, because usually we don't stay put for more than about a month or so. So that's kind of exciting. And before here, we were in Portugal in a little village called Algesur. So yeah, we travel around. We're trying to make this more of a home base here in Portugal. The beach is calling me.
Yeah, I think the water is just like, it's such expansive energy. And it just, I don't know, for me, it's like vision, possibility, like the ocean just calls that in, that there are no limits.
Right. And that it's constantly moving, constantly shifting. And I think I always feel that way. And like, it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be good, but I'm constantly moving and shifting. And the ocean reminds me, no, there are things in the world that's just true.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because you are my book coach right now. I'm actually writing this soul book that's been like brewing in my belly for many, many years. And we've talked about that theme has been unpacked in my life too, that journey of constant moving. And I'm just curious for you, what that movement has meant to you in your life.
Yeah, I really started to reflect on it when you mentioned that in our last call. I started to realize, that explains a lot about some of the things in my own life. And that's why I was so excited that you kind of found it as a theme, this constant movement, this feeling. For me, maybe that's part of the reason why living the life as a nomad, out of us, like one carry-on, me and my husband share one carry-on. So people were like, really, that's all you have since May? Yeah, that's it. We really do have 6 shirts and we wash them. We have, we wear them different days of the week, but like the movement has helped me feel like confident and comfortable with change, which I think is important for me. after leaving a career of teaching and education and being a principal for 24 years, it felt like I was never going to be allowed to change. So I think this movement has helped me understand that it's a part of me. And sometimes the movement for me is in my ideas, my mind shifting from one idea to the next. And that feels good to me, but sometimes it can be uneasy for the people in my life.
Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about the 24-year teacher journey. But before, I just want to know what's been fun and challenging about being nomadic and having a home in Portugal and Puerto Rico and just like, having all these different home bases. I'm curious, what's been fun and challenging about that for you and your husband?
Well, our first move out of the country long term was 2 years in Shanghai, which I know you've been there. It's a different place on the earth for sure.
Yeah.
And like having your life turned upside down and not be able to even communicate basic things at first was really challenging. And yet then I started to see the world in a different place and realized we look at the map, the world, and it's oriented around the center of the world is the US. We don't ever think of the map any other way. But if you look at maps in Europe, they have Europe in the center. And China has itself in the center if you look at a map. And so the globe looks different. And I was like, wow, I never even thought of that. Like the perspective of being in some other place. So that's been good. And I also realized when we left for Shanghai, that was my last sort of education gig there, I told my family we were leaving, and that was really hard for them. But also that we left a son who had just graduated high school, and then our daughter was going to be her senior year to graduate from Shanghai. So a huge shift for them. But we basically purged everything. We didn't get a storage unit. We didn't say we'll come back and rent a house. We didn't have anything. So really we left with 2 suitcases of most of our possessions and a few things like yearbooks at our parents' house. But man, talk about home is where you hang your hat. That's what I learned. And sometimes just a candle holder and maybe a little tapestry that we lay across the bed to remind us this is home is how we've been living for the last year and a half since we left Shanghai, which has been extraordinary and terrifying all at the same time.
And you also have a podcast, Born to Write. And how does that work on the road?
That's been challenging because I've been in countries where like internet's on a good day is challenging. I never used to tell guests where I was or even people on the podcast. So I don't think people realize sometimes I was in a closet in Dominican Republic or, in a back room on an ironing board in a small town in London, or I was in Portugal, or I was all these places. And since I can just bring my mic, I just do my best to set it up and adjust my calendar schedule, but sometimes they're late at night, sometimes they're early morning. But yeah, it was great because no one knew where I was and you didn't really need to see me on camera. So it could be poor lighting or whatever, but as long as I could get internet, I could have this podcast. And it made it interesting. Like it was exciting because I get to connect with people, because being so far away, you have to connect like virtually if you're going to maintain your relationship. So I think it was a way to grow relationships and feel like I was right there with them, even though I was maybe 1,000 miles away.
Yeah. And I remember saying, I was like, you should actually tell people that you're recording on an ironing board or that you're in, a different part of the world, because I think that the location almost plays a character in the scene of your life, which is so fascinating.
I need to do that more. I think, after that, I started telling people, oh yeah, I happen to be in Miami. I don't know. I've never been here, but I'm recording this podcast today. So I'm trying to do that more.
And you mentioned, something that was challenging about moving, it was telling your family. And I'm just curious, what was the conversation? What did you say? How did your family respond? And what was kind of going on inside your mind of kind of processing that, of like what you actually took in? Because I feel that we make decisions and we have people that we care about and that we love, and sometimes they can try to influence those decisions. So I'm just curious, what was the actual conversation of that was hard?
What was initially the hardest one was talking to Skylar, my daughter, because taking her out of school her senior year, like the glory year for some people, I was really worried that this is either the worst decision or the best decision. She was having a tough time emotionally and mentally. So I thought a change would be good, but if she wasn't going to say yes, then we weren't going. And I think that's I didn't tell her that, but that would have been a lot of pressure. If she would have been like, I might fall apart if you take me out of the country right now, then it would have been probably the only person that would have persuaded me otherwise. But Steve and I both decided that if she were on board, we were going to go. And she waited out. And the hardest part was, I'll miss out on this. I'll miss out on those final dances with all my friends, those final moments. She goes, but I think the bigger thing would be I'd miss out on this opportunity if I didn't go. And that would be more difficult to say. I didn't get a chance to live abroad. I didn't get a chance to travel and see the world. So she weighed the consequences. And for her, it meant more to take the risk, and which I appreciate, because I don't know if I would have been in that place at her age. And being raised by two men and having a brother in the house and a dog also being a man, it's like a lot of challenge for a young daughter. But the amazing thing is she went there and she thrived, and she picked up Mandarin. She studied Mandarin. Actually, she finished college level Mandarin in college just recently. So she actually thrived. That was the hardest conversation. Everyone else kind of just assumed we were nuts. Yeah. What are you doing moving to China? You have a great job. You live in one of the most beautiful cities in San Diego in the world. Why would you leave? And my spirit of adventure was calling.
Yeah.
Steve had already done some traveling on his own throughout Asia and Australia and South America. And he's like, we have to go. The world's calling. So I really wanted to go.
Mm. And you now have a TEDx talk, which has over 1 million views on YouTube. And it's titled, What Makes a Good Teacher Great? And I'm curious what inspired you to share this message. And then I'd love to rewind to when you first started teaching, which sounds like it was a very long journey.
It was a while ago. So let's talk about that TEDx. We have the same experience and speaking in the same place for the same TEDx organizer. So we have that reference about how things go.
In the Dominican Republic.
Right. I was living in Shanghai at the time. So that was also another thing. I had just gotten there. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to the Dominican Republic. I'm traveling, 11,000 miles to go speak for 18 minutes. The notion of the idea came from that I had started my very first year teaching, watching a master teacher who would ask these kids, tell me what makes a good teacher. And she'd have them make a list of things, and 10 times had to write a good teacher is. And I observed her doing it and thought, well, that sounds like a good idea, and that maybe I should listen to the kids. But she never had that intent. She just had it as an activity for them to do and then move on to something else. I don't know what her intention was, but I thought it was fascinating. So over the time, I started asking, look, I don't want to be I kept getting these repeated answers like a good teacher's nice, a good teacher's helpful, a good teacher's kind. I'm like, these are not very helpful. So I just took out the word good teacher. I took out the word is and said a good teacher and left it blank. And then they started to get really creative about their answers. They started to show up. So I said, then, well, what's a great teacher? And even more things came up. I was like, this is even more fascinating. So I collected 26,000 responses to this question. So I have one of the few things I left at my mother's house was boxes of these handwritten in pencil mark, back in the day, responses from kids. And I just started to wonder, what does this mean? And so my wonder is, why don't we listen to what kids say? Why don't we ever apply what they say that they would make us great? We have all these rules for them. We have codes of conduct for them, but we rarely as teachers would ask, hey, so what would make me great? And then do what they say. That was the biggest wonder I had. And why hadn't I been listening longer? So that was sort of the premise of the talk. And I changed it the night before and had to re-memorize it because I did it for somebody, my friend Charlie Hohn, who said, I don't think this is quite it. Maybe shift this and that, which means redoing the whole thing the night before, like just shifting that sounded really easy to him. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this in a night. But I guess the results were obviously impactful because tons of people have reached out to me from that TED Talk saying how it impacted them. The ones that break my heart are the kids who say, I basically don't feel like this is what my teacher has ever done for me. And I want to inspire teachers to do that.
Can you think of a specific student or moment around that part that breaks your heart?
Yeah, I share this in the TED Talk. Is I had this opportunity to teach in the inner city LA, and it's a different challenge teaching inner city because they have the dropout rate in high school is at 50 or 60%. So if they graduate at 8th grade, it's a big deal. Oftentimes you start in September, and by the middle of the year, half your student has already left, turned over population wise. Like it's really challenging. So I became better at being a teacher. Maybe I became a good teacher. I don't think I ever was great, but I started getting better at it. And this one student, Yvette, who was always quite ornery and, attitudinal, kind of had that reputation out in the play yard of being that girl all the girls would listen to, and she kind of was intimidating. And I was getting on her, but eventually she kind of turned the tide, and she started to listen and started to do work and started to actually be a leader in the classroom. It was amazing, because on the playground, she was a menace. I wouldn't say she's on the gang side. She wasn't in a gang, but she was definitely a presence. But as time went on, I noticed she started to slip, not turning homework. One week in particular, she didn't turn stuff in. I got really hard on her. Like, you know what? Because I figured she needed expectation. I said, you need to turn your homework. And I remember she said, I'm trying, mister. And I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. Well, I expect it tomorrow. And the next day she turned in maybe a part of the sheet that she was supposed to do. And I remember thinking, God, this is not acceptable. So I pulled her aside and said, this is not acceptable. And she said, I normally do my homework in the bathroom because that's the quietest place in my house where I live. I was doing my homework, but our electricity got turned off. So I was using a candle, but then the candle burnt out. So I'm really sorry, mister. And my heart just sank, because I remember thinking, she told me when she said, I'm trying, mister, but I didn't hear her. I heard the words, but I didn't try to understand, right? So that's one of the big lessons that happened, is great teachers listen. They don't just hear you, they listen. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things I found, but it was later that I started to discover more rich things in these comments, because kids use their own language. They don't talk like adults, like teachers. So they're not going to overtly be clear because they're not communicating the way we would. So it's taken me a while to kind of understand what it all meant. And that's sort of the journey that I was taken on in reflecting on all these things.
And you having, over 1 million views, my curiosity is one, how does that feel for you to know that 1 million people have viewed this wonder that you had of what makes a good teacher great?
I feel humbled. You know what? I feel a little bit embarrassed, and I don't know why. I feel embarrassed as if I'm not worthy to have that attention, because I didn't set out to try to have 1 million views. And a lot of people have asked, well, how did you do it? What was the thing you did? I'm like, I just had a message worth sharing. That's the whole topic of TED, like an idea worth spreading. I think that's the crux of it. I just didn't realize it would have that big of an impact on people. And I've had people reach out to me. There's a group of teachers in Slovenia, of all places, who said, hey, we want to use your talk and talk about things in your slide. Can we use your quotes? I was like, of course you can. And one of the quotes that I said that I got from kids was, a great teacher eats apples, which I always thought was fascinating. And in my talk, I talk about that. But they used it to reference their entire conference, and they screenshotted, or they shared with me a picture of all of them holding up apples, because they held a conference around what makes a good teacher great. And they were so excited to talk about wanting to be great teachers. And it just warmed my heart that there's still people out there, teachers in particular, wanting to do good by kids and be great as they could. So like things like that, those things are humbling. Like, it's so humbling to think about that something you create for 15 minutes on a stage could have an impact some other place in the world. It means I really feel like it's those years of wisdom of children that are impacting people. It's not me. I just happened to be the one that was holding on to those things for a while and trying to wonder about them. And the only reason they're useful is because other people are also wondering too.
And what is that voice inside your head, the part of you that is embarrassed and doesn't feel like you deserve that? What's that voice saying?
I think that voice says, who are you and why do you deserve this? And I think I was always super cautious of exploiting a good thing, a useful thing. So I always feel like it's a little bit, I don't know, like I don't want to exploit it, but then I realize it's something that's important, it's impactful. And I think it's been useful. It's been a tool for me to observe and share what I know. And I think part of me always thought I should be in the limelight, which feels awkward. So now it's coming true. So now I feel even more awkward. So I don't know what to do with it. I'm a super introverted person. People in college, you say, oh, you talk? I didn't even know you could talk, because I would rarely say anything in groups. So they never thought I would say anything. But then someone who would see me on stage go, who are you? And I'm like, this is who I am. I just don't share it with you very often. So I'm wrestling with it. That voice in my head is just sort of I call I say voices. I call them the committee, Jada, and the committee comes together and has meetings, and they talk about me, and they decide on what I'm doing, and it's sort of like the ego's friends, and it goes, hey, he did this before. He's going to fail if he tries it. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's like the last time. And they even have personas like, oh, it's my Aunt Greta. Oh, gosh, remember when he did that? And, they all have answers. And there's one voice that's usually like, hey, he can do it. And they're like, shh, be quiet. So I feel a little crazy, but that's what's really going on when I sit and meditate. I realize all these voices are in my head, the committee, and I have to silence them to remind myself that this act of service by showing up is something that, I should do. It's not something even that I feel like it's a question. I just have to, as long as I take my ego out of it, which is really hard.
Yeah. What would you say for someone who's like, how do I get a TEDx talk? How do I get lots of views from your perspective, your experience? What is your message to someone who's just like so eager to share their message on a stage and to reach as many people as possible?
Yeah. I mean, and I think I tried to communicate this to the people that have asked me for help, is like I say that, the hardest part about sharing anything is sharing a simple idea that other people can talk about. So one, make it a curiosity that you have about the world, that you wonder about, that's so simple that other people just walked over, like the golden egg in an Easter egg hunt. Most people walked right by it, but never saw it. That's kind of the way a simple idea is. People aren't looking for simple ideas. They're looking for big ideas. And simple ideas don't stand out. They sit quietly waiting to be found. So I always tell people, what do you wonder about the world? What irks you? What challenges you? Like, that's the thing. You want to get 1 million views? Have an idea that people already had in their head. And when they hear it, go, oh, that's right. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for like, whoa, I didn't ever imagine that was possible. Because people shy away from those ideas, actually. They don't talk about those ideas. They want to talk about an idea that's simple. I've had people quote me all over the place. In fact, another TEDx speaker from MIT, he was a professor. He'd get multiple TEDx, and his assistant reached out to me and said, hey, we want to use, Professor so-and-so wants to use your TED Talk. Slides from your TED Talk and his TED Talk. I'm like, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that sounds good. And they were very persistent. I said, well, you can reference it, the slide, if you want, but you have to give credit because, this is somebody I commissioned to do this. I want to make sure it's clear where it came from. They're like, okay, fine. But I thought, this isn't odd. But he quoted the TED Talk because he had taken the advice in the TED Talk of the students, which is a great teacher sings. And he, as an experiment, decided he would sing in one of his classes as a professor. And he talks about that experiment and what happened and how joyful it was for him and his students. So it was really mind-blowing to watch now a professor who's using the TED Talk to take action. And I'm again humbled, but it's simple truths that we're given. So if you want to find a talk, an idea, find the simple thing that's right before you. And oftentimes we're looking for something way far away from us. And it's usually something simple right before our eyes. We just don't see it because it sits so close to us sometimes.
Yeah. And, another thing that both you and I do is this intuitive relationship building, because I think it would be helpful for you to unpack how you were able to have your TEDx talk opportunity, because the way that I was able to have my TEDx talk opportunity was by having a relationship with you. And I think I just mentioned in passing, like saying my dreams out loud, that I would love to do a TEDx talk someday. And so I would just love for you to kind of unpack how you got it to how I got it, and just like how that relationship building works, which is so different than a more step-by-step strategic path to speak on a stage like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't apply for it. It wasn't how I got invited. It had been around for 7 years, I think, when I did it. And it was similar to the way you got it. I had a relationship with somebody there, and Charlie Hone, who's one of my dear friends, was somebody I was in his mastermind for several years when I was first trying to figure out entrepreneurship and crashing and burning at every turn possible. Still in the classroom trying to figure out what entrepreneurship is all about. But we built a really good friendship. I think adding value to that group really, I think it made an impact to him. So we stayed friends. He had spoke the year before and was actually going back. He's one of the only people to speak twice at that event, but he put my name out and said, I think you should talk to Azul. He'd be great at it. He has this interesting book called The Art of Apprenticeship. But more than that, he has this interesting idea about all these quotes he's collected. Ask him about that. And that's basically all he said. And that was the introduction. And on the Skype call, which is about 45 minutes, he was basically, okay, you're in. And then what? No, you can come. You should come. I was like, how did that happen? And I think the relationship building part is intuitive for me. I know intuitively, I can't say because it's wisdom, it's just intuition about like who are the people that are going to impact my life or whose life I can impact. And that's where I invest my time and energy, not because other people aren't important. I think people go into a room looking for the most important person in the room. And I look for the most influential person, maybe because they're going to influence me or the most person I can give influence to. And I find that person and I try to give to them or be ready to receive if it's their opportunity. And I don't know exactly how that looks, but you watch people's behaviors and you observe the way they're interacting. And it's happened multiple times again and again where this has happened, where I just invested the right amount of interest and energy. And that has happened so beautifully. And then beautiful relationships have blossomed with people like I would never imagine would decide that they would befriend me. And if I had to plan it out, I couldn't. I just had to be present. And I think that's it, and aware.
What I love is both sides of who might be able to impact my life, as well as who might I be able to influence or impact their life. So just in that way of showing up and building relationships, I think is so important because it's the same for me. I'm not always looking for an opportunity of where can I get or gain something. I'm kind of opening of like, I have gifts. And who do I see here that I could actually really support? And so it's the longer nurturing process and not even knowing what the outcome is. So it's not like you're like, I'm going to be friends with this person because one day they're going to introduce me to somebody where I can speak on a TEDx talk stage. Like it doesn't work that way. Authentic relationship building doesn't work that way. So I really appreciate you showing that it's not just about the getting or the gaining, it's about the giving.
I agree. In fact, it's the one thing that in my book, The Art of Friendship, that I actually mapped out because I knew that I couldn't just get to where I saw these wonderful people like Chris Gilbo and Pat Flynn. I wanted to live that way and have a business, but I knew that I couldn't like learn from a blog post or from a course. I knew if I was going to be able to learn, I myself needed to be in their presence and just observe. And I didn't need them to be my direct mentor or anything like that. I just wanted to be in their presence and watch. So that's why I called it apprenticeship. It's sort of a lost art where the apprentice is the servant of the master, and they sweep up all the broken glass from the glass blowing or the shavings from this activity, the wood carver. But they're observing, and maybe every once in a while they get a spare piece of wood, or they watch and listen to the way that they talk to the client. Like they're learning. That's their apprenticeship, is being a servant. And I think that's what people are missing. They're looking for someone to go, hey, I really want to, they say, I want to, kind of learn from you. I want you to be my mentor. I tell people that's the worst thing you could tell somebody. Will you be my mentor? Please don't say that, because people who are successful really don't have the bandwidth to be your mentor. But you can follow their tribe. You can watch their group. You can go serve their tribe and contribute. People who contribute to tribes get noticed by the person who's serving. But if you don't ever show up and serve and just ask, hey, can I bend your ear a little bit? Of course not. That's a very selfish act, but serving is always welcomed, right? Especially if you're serving a tribe of people that you, as the person who's leading, already loves. That opens and warms your heart. So like people ask me, how did Pat Flynn become basically one of your very first coaching clients when you didn't have a business? And I tell people through service to be applying this idea of observing and serving, finding ways to serve. And that's how I became known by Pat. He's the one that asked me. I didn't ask him at all.
So take me on that journey of, I want to see all the dots. So take me to when and it's fascinating because you and I, and it's so cyclical and integrated because I have you as my book writing coach. We're inside a mastermind together with Pat Flynn. Like it's all like we can all serve and support each other in different capacities with our different gifts. But I'm curious, when did you first discover Pat Flynn and then just kind of connect all the dots of that service and then the outreach to you then becoming his book coach?
Right. So I started reading his blog probably in 2009, early on. And I just was trying to figure out this online income thing where you can have this quote passive income. I thought that's what I need. But I couldn't figure it out. I started blogs. I started I still own the domain recoveryfrombankruptcy.com, which is, I think, is a pretty clever name. But I buy all these domains trying to create, back, a decade ago, you get AdWords and all these things on your site. And I was just trying to learn, miserably failing along the way. I thought, you know what? I need to figure out how to learn more in person because I don't get it. These people are like getting WordPress really quick. It took me a long time to figure out how to run my WordPress, and which is the back end of a blog I was trying to start. Well, I saw that there was a posting probably 2010 that, hey, Pat Flynn and Chris Tucker were running these one-day business breakthroughs, and one was in San Diego where they take 20 people, they put them on a hot seat for 15 minutes, and then they give them advice about their business. And I was like, wow, 20 people all in the room I'll learn. I know I'll figure out something. So I bought it without even thinking about it. I didn't have the money. I think I put it on a credit card. I don't think I even told Steve at the time until later. And then they send you details, right? Hey, send us your website, send us your revenue, how many people are on your email list, all these things. What's your growth potential? And I was like, I don't even have a business. Like, I should have paid more attention to the details. ENFP. Like, I have no idea what to put. I was in the midst of working on this idea for a book, The Art of Apprenticeship. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to see if that domain name is available, artofapprenticeship.com. And I'm going to finish this book. I have about 30 days before this event. I'm going to write this book and I'm going to show up with this book done. And that's what I'll do. That's what I'll share when I get there. And that was my only strategy. No business. And these people, there were some people 7-figure authors. It wasn't like people were successful. There was like the wealth heiress, Linda P. Jones, she mentors millionaires, and all these very successful people. And I thought, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I'm terrified. But I reached out to Pat about a few weeks before, and I said, hey, Pat, I noticed a few people are flying in from different parts of the world, different countries even. Like, is there a meetup the night before to like get to know, so people can connect? He's like, no. I was like, well, I'd love to host it, like help people so they don't feel like they're new to the city, and I'll just set it up if that's okay. And he's like, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Should we go? Me and Chris, and, should I pay for it? I'm like, no, you shouldn't pay for it. You just don't need. And no, you can't go. He's like, what? I was like, well, Pat, if you go, then they won't talk to each other. They'll talk to you, and they're going to listen to you all day tomorrow. So I think, the next day, so they should just go get comfortable and meet each other. He's like, oh, that's a good point. And so as much as I really wanted to meet Pat Flynn, I knew that the best thing for the people was to connect to each other. And so maybe half of the 20 people showed up. I just picked a place and we had drinks. And then the next day when we show up, I knew half the people. I was like, oh, hey, Azul, hey, Azul. And Pat was really grateful. Chris was really grateful. And I think that moment of service is what started that relationship, because I showed up to serve. I wasn't trying to take. I wasn't trying to get anything from it. And in fact, Pat didn't ask me right away because they were all floored that I wrote a book in 30 days, which I didn't think was hard, even though it took me 22 years to write the book. The hard part wasn't the writing. It was believing it was worth anything. So what happened later was a lot of people actually came up to me. Several people came up to me and said, would you help me write my book? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And that was how my business started, as people asking me about it through the process of sharing my ideas about book writing. And, being a teacher, being a university instructor, all had things that helped support that. But that was the beginning. And the next business breakthrough, Pat Flynn reached out to me and goes, hey, we want to invite you. Of course, we're going to give you a ticket. Would you please host another event? This time it's 50 people. And I was like, sure. So sort of immediately I became a part of a small group of people and got able to meet all these other people and kept serving in that way. And then Pat asked me for coffee and said, look, I really want you to help me write my book. Would you help me? And that's the long version probably, but that's how it kind of came about.
I love the long version. What's fascinating is that's how I met Chris, and Pat was going to the one-day business breakthrough.
Oh, Jana, we're so much alike.
I know. I love it so much. So, what did you bring to, because, I was a part of that and everyone kind of had like a hot seat and they got to share their business or their website. So you just shared the art of apprenticeship. Your hot seat.
Right. Can you imagine this? I just designed it like a talk. I stood up there and I had no idea what to do. Like all these people were saying, like, here's my website, I had nothing. They had, they were showing all these things. I didn't even have an email. So like, I didn't even know nothing. So I just stood up there like it was a performance because that's what I do. So I started from the very beginning of this kid who was gathering up crayons and coloring books and would color the pictures and take them and sell them door to door for 5 cents, saying I'm an artist. And that was the journey that my entrepreneurship began, and talking about the journey of the book, which was in there, and why entrepreneurship has been in my blood and what I believed. And like, I just told it like a story. I didn't try to present this as a business model. Well, of course, Chris is like, you need to make this a course. You need to make this a podcast. And I was like, I'm not even sure why I'm here, to be honest. Like, I don't know that I want to do that. But yeah, that's my story. That was it.
And so was becoming the book writing coach, was that your first dollar made in entrepreneurship, from teacher to entrepreneur?
No, it wasn't my first one. It might have been my first one, sort of like as it became a virtual idea.
Yeah. The passive income-ish.
Yeah, ish, right? Because I still was trading time for dollars. I had tried lots of things. I decided when I was a principal, I had to get out. It wasn't working for me. Right before the recession, and I, with my former wife, we built a gym, which I loved doing, and I loved serving people. It was a gym for people who hate the gym. Basically, there were no mirrors. Like, it was just meant for helping people over 35 who knew they needed to get healthy, but knew they wouldn't go to a regular gym. Anyways, I loved doing it, but I sold it, but I basically went bankrupt trying to protect my assets. So that was a big failure. So that was a lot of my fear in trying again. But online, starting something, that was my first step forward. I actually produced a DVD, was another thing I tried. I was like, could I produce a DVD for $500 or less, which I knew nothing about doing? Finding a director of photography, getting male actors, or this was like a workout video, finding studio space, all this for under $500, which I did. And I did launch that DVD, but I didn't make any money. So yeah, it's basically my first step forward.
I love it. It's so good because I feel like our paths are so parallel, and like, leaving more of the teaching, guiding, to moving into a brick and mortar, to closing that down, being in debt, bankrupt, and then moving into like, well, what if I didn't have to pay an actual like physical lease, because having it's a lot. So it's our journeys. Like, I feel we're just like ENFP twins.
Right. And I was paying these employees and paying the rent, but barely being able to survive. I went to actually my therapist. She's like, so you have no money to eat? I think it was when I told her that I play a game with my kids called Let's Go Collect Cans and Take It In, because that's how I was feeding my kids at the time. I was a single dad. I don't think they don't know we're broke as heck, because we used to live in a big, huge 5-bedroom, 4-bath house. And like, they didn't know, like they knew that it just wasn't the same. But yeah, so she's like, you don't have to suffer like this. And that was a moment I realized, oh, so I'm causing the suffering. Yeah. Oh, so it was a lot of like, I felt like I deserved that. I felt like I was punishing myself for making a mistake and not doing, right by, business owners. So like, it was really humbling, but it was really what I needed to learn, that making mistakes isn't the end. Even if it feels like the stigma of bankruptcy, it feels like maybe the way divorce felt in the 50s, bankruptcy still feels now like, oh, that happened to you. So, I think that hurt me and helped me in a lot of ways to understand that you can dust yourself off and get back up.
I love that. And you mentioned writing a book in 30 days. Yeah. And you said it was easy. So where did the gumption to like write a book that you've been thinking about for 20 plus years come? I know, well, I guess the motivation came from that timeline, that short deadline, which ENFPs create their best work from that concentrated place where we feel like we're procrastinating, but you've been brewing and thinking about that. But what were some of the tips and strategies that you use to write a book in 30 days? And then I'm also curious, how has that shifted and how you coach your clients now through the book writing process?
Right. Yeah, it's a little unfair. Yeah, you can write a book in 30 days. It's really easy. It just takes 24 years. I think the thing that really changed for me was my why changed. I really wanted to make the leap out of the classroom, and I knew that this was my opportunity. My why was, I want to be able to speak on stages. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to have impact on the world. And at first, I always was worried about, do I have the right idea? Is this the best idea? I have so many ideas. I couldn't pick the right idea. But I saw how easily this idea married into going to this event and doing what I wanted to do. Like, it was the right idea for the time. There's no wrong idea, just the one you choose. So I tell people, look, you have to be really clear about what your why. If you envision this book doing something amazing for you, it shall. If you think, oh, I'm going to get this book to make $1 million or have 1 million sales, then learn marketing, because that's marketing. You know, that's like figuring out what people want so you can sell it to them. But if you're looking to impact 1 million lives, of course, a book can do that. I want people to be clear about their why, because there is a hungry beast that chases you when you go to write a book, and it wants everything to do to devour you and keep you from it. Stephen Pressfield talks about the war of art, and it's real. It shows up in ways that you didn't even know were real, even if you're a creator in other ways. Pat talks about it. Lots of people talk about, yeah, why is this so hard? I go, because you're showing up on a page. It's not something you think. It's who you are. That's the hardest part, because you don't want to be judged. You're worried about all these, you know, is it good enough? What if you don't like it? What if it's bad? What if it gets bad reviews? And I tell people, work on your mental game before you start to write, so that when you do write, you know that you're clear on your purpose. You know that this is a big thing, but when it shows up, you can fight it. And then the last thing, remember, writing books about words on a page. Chris Gilbo told me when I asked him, 2013, I met him. I said, Chris, I really want to write a book. What do I do? He's like, write 1,000 words a day and you'll finish a book in no time. He's like, heck, write 500 words a day. He goes, it's just words on a page. The number of words you do, you have to finish. Most people never finish. They talk about books. They write about books. They quote research. And really, I mapped it out for 30 days. I go, well, if I want to finish this book, which is going to be a short book, but it's 35,000 words or 20,000 words, whatever you end up deciding, you go, how many words do I have to write each day to get to that goal? And that's all I did. It's like, today I have to write 900 words, tomorrow 1,500. I just mapped it out and I wrote that many words, even if they were terrible. I didn't let that keep me from writing. So I didn't let my judgment show up. And I think a lot of people don't think about it as writing as words on a page. They don't even know how many words they can write in an hour. So they don't have to sit there for 3 hours ago. I wrote today, and I learned this lesson from my friend in college. He asked to borrow my computer, because back in the day, one person in the dorm had a computer. I was one of those people. He's like, can I borrow your computer? I have a paper. He was an English major. He sat in my room. I went to class all day. I came back, go, hey, how'd the paper go? He's like, he's staring at a blank screen. I'm like, how'd that paper go? He's like, I haven't quite started yet. I was like, you haven't written anything? No, I've really been working on it. Well, I wrote, but then I deleted and I'm writing. And that's the enemy, not writing. The action is the one that defeats the resistance. And so I tell people, like, don't try to be good, just do. Doing's way better than being good. Being good is overrated. Writing's a team sport. Lots of people can help you make it better, but only you can do the first draft.
Oh, I'm like listening for my own writing process and like all the questions. So you talk about, you need to work on the mental part first. And so from tactical perspective, how does someone work on their mental game around writing first? Yeah.
So first of all, realize that books don't come in singular packages. What I mean is ideas come in like crayons come, and they come in a package. You don't go buy one crayon. Ideas for books don't show up by themselves. The biggest dilemma people face is if they're on the right path, and then they worry about, is it any good? And then they go back to, is this the right, and they keep going in circles. One of the unpacking is empty your head on a page. So if you're thinking about writing a book, dump your head onto a page. Just do a brain dump. Nikki, our friend, doesn't like dump. She's like brain sneeze. She's like,
I love brain sneeze.
She's like, dump's kind of vulgar. How about sneeze? I'm like, okay, that works. But just empty your head. You've got to see what's in your head, because books come in so many multiple packs at a time. If you don't separate them, you start to write too much in a book. And so that's one of the things you can do is observe what's in your head on paper so that you realize, oh, no wonder I'm sort of overwhelmed. There's a lot in here. And these ideas are connected, but they're all different. So that's one thing. The other thing you can think about is the simpler the idea, the better it is. And most people want to be seen as an expert, so they put lots of ideas in there. And when you do that, you kind of crowd the space and block the flow of writing. And I tell people like this, it's like a funnel. So if your ideas are the liquid, the water that flows, and the bottle is the book where you pour your ideas into. So this is a book, these are my ideas. And the funnel is what you use to get it in there. Oftentimes things get in that funnel. And no matter that you have a great idea or you have the perfect book idea, you try to pour your ideas into the book and it just seems like it doesn't work. Well, there are these, I think of them as like clear marbles. You remember those marbles you used to get when you were a kid, that little clear, we used to call them puree marbles. Those white marbles that sit in that water, in that thing, you just can't see them and they're blocking the funnel and it's pouring over the top. Nothing's getting in the bottle. And a lot of what you have is those ideas stuck in your head when you're trying to write book. It's one book pushing on another book idea, pushing on another one. So people have to get a book down to such a simple idea. And this is the exercise I tell them. I said, if you can't explain your idea to the woman in line behind you who's 90 years old and she gets it, or the 9-year-old ahead of you and he gets it, then your book's too complicated. You want your books to be so simple it won't be confused. And too many people try to be Malcolm Gladwell. And I tell them, he just thinks that way. He's wired that way. That's how he thinks. You don't have to think like him, but you want to impress not the other writers. You want to make sure that people talk about your book. That's how your idea spreads, because most people don't remember everything to learn a book. They only remember one or two little things. Make sure your book's memorable. So helping people like sift through their ideas helps that mental game shift, because now they're not focusing on all these things. They're trying to focus on so few that it becomes really clear how they attack their book.
That's really helpful for me, because that's how I do my business planning, is like the brain dump, or I call it the dream bank of ideas. Cool. And then it's like you've got to get everything out of your head and onto paper. So it's helpful for me because I'm like, oh, I know how to do strategic business planning that feels like there's a lot of creativity and flow, and then it's like getting down to like, okay, but what are the 1 to 3 things that I'm going to be working on for the next 3 months? And so I can see that in like the book writing process too. If you got to get it all out, and then there's some steps that you get it down to the core essence. And I love the concept of simple idea versus big idea.
Yeah, think about it. Simon Sinek, start with why. That's his book idea. That's it. It's not complicated. Everyone knows it. It's so easy to talk about. He spends a whole time talking about starting with why in multiple ways. He has an incredible business based on this model, and all his books are built around it. A simple idea that everyone else noticed. Plenty of people say, I used to ask that all the time. I go, yeah, but he wrote the book about it. So write in the desk, ask, right? Simple. Keep it simple. People remember simple. You know, if you want to write a book of literature, then probably that's a different thing. But I'm talking about the books that the influencers write. Those are the books I'm trying to help people curate.
And are there any habits or rituals that you personally have to get yourself into that creative flow?
I try to make sure that I don't leave my writing to the aftermath of my day. Sometimes I will write at night because I feel most at peace at night. But oftentimes, if that's what I'm intending, like, oh, I can't wait to write tonight, it's going to be so wonderful. But if I leave it and go, oh my gosh, I didn't write, then you're basically stopping creativity and forcing flow, and you can't do that. You can make words appear on a page, but for me, make sure I schedule time to write, and I make a simple goal that I won't miss. So in 2019, it's like, I just write every day. For my book, though, I might write. Currently, I'm writing 1,000 words a day. And if I miss it, I give myself forgiveness. But my goal is 1,000 words because I know I make progress. When I get about 800, I'm still struggling with an idea. I know there's resistance for me. That's not true for everybody. But for me, I feel it's like running 3 miles. The first mile I hate. It's about mile 3 when I feel like, oh, this is good. Writing for me, I know around word 1,000, I can tell whether or not I'm resisting. So That's for me is a daily habit of writing for a certain period of time. So some people like write every day. I like to write in sprints. So I'll say like for 30 days, I'll write this much every day or 15 days. And creating a writing sprint helps me because I don't have to worry about all the times before or after, just the time in which I'm writing. And then I can reset and create a new sprint. But that helps me a lot because I don't have to feel like I'll be writing forever. And I think that's why the 30-day challenge for myself worked. Holding myself accountable. I posted daily videos and I wrote my first book by hand in a journal. Like I didn't type it, which maybe wasn't the wisest thing.
That's awesome. So old school.
Old school.
Back in the 1800s.
Yeah, right. If I had a candle and a inkwell. But what I did was I took away all the excuses. I get so distracted sometimes. So I carried that journal around. I went to coffee shops and that was my reward. I get to go have my coffee or I get to sit in a different place. Sometimes I'm kind of embarrassed to say this. I would go to hotels, really fancy hotels, and just walk with like my babies. Like I would belong there and walked right in and sat by the pool and ordered a nice drink. And I wrote as if I were a guest at the pool.
I love it.
So I just kind of created like fun experiences for myself, not every day, but like when I could. And then I would talk about it. And halfway through, maybe a little more than half, I lost that journal. I lost it. I could not find it. I was like, oh, this is not good. I have to go to One Day Business Breakthrough. I lost my journal. But I kept talking about it. I go, hey guys, I'm writing. I'm going to pick it up on the computer because I lost my journal. I'm not giving up. And I have my little mind map here and away I go. And then about 3 days later, I was cleaning and it had fallen behind the couch, probably where the remote control goes. And I found it there. I was like, everybody, I found my book. And people were like cheering online, because I would post on social every day what I was doing. And so it also created buzz for the book. So, it helped. I didn't know anything about marketing. I was just doing this as a way to keep myself accountable, but it created attention. People liked seeing behind the scenes, like, hey guys, I'm walking in this hotel right now. People loved it. And it was sort of silly and it was playful. It didn't make it such a heavy burden to bear.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually just voxed Nikki Elledge Brown, who has worked with you as well, of like just in February, do a 28-day challenge and just post every day on Instagram, Facebook, wherever your people are at to keep you accountable, make it fun. And so I hear that like a challenge, like a month-long challenge with a word count. And then the other part that I love is to make it fun and rewarding and like finding an environment that just makes it feel like, ooh, like you're on a date with your writing habit. And I really, really love that. And also eliminating excuses of just always having it with you. Like, I just really love that. Were there any other excuses that you tried to eliminate? Like any other things?
I think one of them was that this isn't any good. I think that one, I reminded myself, this doesn't have to be good. It has to be done. Because I couldn't show up with nothing. I could show up with a bad book because people aren't going to say, oh, your book's bad. But if I showed up with nothing, that's the thing that I knew was the only thing that would make a difference. So I stopped worrying about it being good. Most people don't write out of fear that it's not going to be good enough. And I tell people, so live in the present moment. Don't worry about what it could do or might do. Just worry about what it's doing for you right now. And for me, it was energizing me, giving me hope that this is what I'm meant to do, is help people through the things I say, the things I do. And my kids, my classroom students at the time, I remember I was teaching, I think 8th grade at the time, and I was publishing them since 2008. I learned how to do the self-publishing route. And so they were becoming published authors at 13. And one student really naively said, Mr. Terronez, where's your book? And I'm thinking, oh crap. All I had to say is, I don't have one. He's like, oh, and he walked away. And I thought, that's BS. I need a book. How could he just do that? Like, oh, no. I had all this resistance and I was like, he's right. What am I afraid of? Like, I'm telling them to put their books out there and I won't do it. And that's unacceptable. It became an issue of like, this is not right. I can't do this and say kids, they can do whatever they believe they can do. And then I wasn't doing it. It's not right.
Yeah. One thing that comes up for me when I hear you say that, and I always say that leaders need to be held too. And I know that I have this story in my head of like, I'm not coachable, like no one can support me. But it's that when we lean into, having that outside accountability, support, someone to help guide you. Like that's what I realized is like book is number one priority for me in 2019. I was like, oh, I need to hire Azul. Like I need to put like my money, my time, my resources, my energy towards that. If that is the priority in this moment, and if I'm not getting there on my own. So some people can be self-motivated and can make stuff happen, just like, you had an event, a date, for the one-day business breakthrough, that you were able to make that happen. And so it's just like, if you're feeling stuck around getting your message, a dream, an idea, a book, a talk out, and it is a priority of yours, what support do you need to actually make it a reality? And I just realized, I can't just keep talking about the book or doodling about it in my journal and in my 3-year vision. I actually need to take some imperfect action and get the support I need to get it out of me.
Yeah. Books are like children. They're not perfect. They are. They just are. You don't judge your children. I wish I would have had another shot at that one. You just, they come from within you, and the level at which you show up for them is the way in which they decide to show up for the readers. I tell people, look, books are transformational. You can write a transactional book, which is, I know lots of stuff in my head and I'm going to share it with you. In fact, I often have people on my show like, I know a lot of stuff. Here's it is. And it's useful, but it's not transformational. The biggest impact a book can have is on the author who writes it. If they grow and change in it, and they find transformation and truth in a way they hadn't seen before, looked into themselves, into the world, solved their problem in a different way, then they already get the gift that the book's intended for. The message of the author is only amplified by sharing it with others. It isn't true because of the fact that other people validate it. That's why I'm humbled by what makes a good teacher great as a TED Talk. I was validating an idea in a book that, would this be worthy? Would it be worth it? And the truth is, it was worth it for me. I learned so much in reflecting backwards and thinking about all the times I wasn't listening. I already got the value. So even if the book that comes out here this year isn't a wild success, it doesn't mean it wasn't super valuable. And then when you do, you show up for yourself, then you get 1 million views on a TED Talk, or you sell lots of books. But it isn't because you said, that's what I'm going to do. And I know people do that versus marketing. I have nothing against marketing. I think it's a beautiful way to share your message. But I also think you deserve, as the author, the transformation first. It belongs to you, so that you gain this wonderful sort of gaining your inherent wisdom and internal uniqueness to shine, because it's what we need. We need more of people to show up.
So as we wrap up, I would just love to know, Azul, what is your why right now? What is the vision that you are moving towards?
I honestly am looking for an opportunity to find peace in what I have and not in what I don't, and to build something that can take care of my family, even if I'm not here. So my parents, my children, or the people that would come after me, the people who I would call my family, because I feel like the guideposts sometimes in our life get set at certain generations. Like here's the marker, not for success, but for happiness and joy. So my goal is to just say, I'm putting it here, wherever I stand. I hope this is a guide for you, those who would follow or come after, because it certainly is for me where I am.
Oh, I love that intention, and just like, what we have right in front of us is enough.
Yeah.
Well, Azul, is there anything else you'd love to share? And I definitely will make sure people can find you over at Coach Azul. Where else can people find you?
They can find me on the Born to Write podcast. It's always fun to listen to authors talk about their struggles, their journeys, because I like to ask questions about how they got the book out of them. Not that the book's not important, but I want to know more about how they get in there. So that's a place you can find me at Born to Write podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. And is there anything that you would like to share before we wrap up and say goodbye?
I would love to say thank you. Thank you for taking a risk and sitting on a boat in Cebu and having a conversation with me when everyone else was saying, look at the sunset, you're missing the sunset. And I said, I feel like saying, but you're missing Jada. She's right here. The sun will be here tomorrow, but Jada is not going to be here. She's going somewhere else. I'll have to hope this is not the only time I see her, but thank you. That's what I'd like to say.
I so appreciate you, Azul. And it's been such a cool journey. Like, we were just recently in London strategizing how we could get to Paris in a day with my husband, your husband. We went out dancing, and I just feel like I'm so thankful to have you in my life, not just as a coach and a guide that's helping me pull out and be transformed by the next book that I want to write. But also, you're just a really, really great human being and friend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your heart and attention in listening to Lead with Love. If this message, leading with love in life and business, and remembering the humans and beating hearts behind the numbers and all of that good stuff, I would love for you to take the time to leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people find out about the goodness and helping spreading more love in the world, which we really, really need. So I would really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.